Well, hello, corrections, intro to corrections, Professor Palmicki here. It's Monday morning, August 27th. Hope you guys had a great weekend. We're going to talk a little bit about sentencing and some of the issues that go along with sentencing. This should be an overview from what you should have gone over and done in CJC 111, Intro to Criminal Justice. But we can't really get into corrections without talking a little bit about sentencing. What I'm not going to be discussing now is the number of people in jail or in prison. We're just going to kind of go over some of the basic things that happen sentencing-wise. All the work for this particular week, which is week 3, it's going fast, will be due on Sunday, September 2nd. By the usual time, 11:30 p.m. Any issues with the exam or anything that, if it might say 11:30 a.m., I will have gone in and fixed that by the time you go to take the exam. All right, sorry about that. If you were in a class that had that slight glitch this past weekend, that has been fixed, no problems. But if you do encounter that again, let me know, and I'll make the necessary changes. All right, so let's share the old screen here again, like we always do. That was incorrect. Where is that which we are looking for? Right, with any kind of luck, you're seeing the big screen that says sentencing with me up in the right-hand corner. Basically, even as what the book says, sentencing is some kind of a criminal sanction by a judicial authority. That just means that when you've been found guilty, or if you've pled guilty, or if you pled nolo contendere, you are going to have some type of sanction placed upon you. And that means that the judge is going to be the one that is going to be creating that sentence, unless it's a death penalty case, in which case juries have to be involved. 1984 was the big year for the Comprehensive Crime Control Act, and part of this was the U.S. Sentencing Commission was formed, and they created some changes in terms of how sentencing had to be done. I'm going to include that video that I just went by really quick, so you can watch that on our webpage. We're talking about 4 different kinds of sentencing options that the judge has: locking you up in some kind of a facility, probation, which is probably the most common sentence today. It's also the cheapest sentence. Costs about $1 a day to keep somebody on probation. There are fines, which, of course, if you pay a fine, you're not going to go to jail. And the ultimate punishment, which is death. Fewer and fewer states have a death penalty today. There's currently 31 states that have a death penalty, 19 that don't. As you may or may not know, Nebraska has become the most recent state to abolish the death penalty and then reinstate it. And a couple days ago, the state of Nebraska executed a killer that had been on death row for over 20 years. Oddly enough, they executed him using fentanyl. So let's talk a little bit about what these traditional sanctions are. And we're going to look at a sentencing grid, and you'll see why the judge would go with a certain sentence. Fines are the oldest form of sentencing. That number down at the bottom, $1 billion in fines, probably higher than that today. This is could be an older statistic. Fines are typically used in combination with other penalties. So you might hear the whatever felony A, punishable by up to 10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine per charge. Are the fines like that typically collected? No, typically not. But it is it is something that has to be mentioned regardless of the crime itself. So fines, the arguments for and against fines, people say that it's too mild and they're just not being punished enough, and it discriminates against the poor. I can tell you just my experience from court that the court wants to get their money, and the court in Illinois actually would allow people to go on payment plans. I've seen some court judges let people pay $10 a month for however long it took them to pay off their fine. The court will get their money. The court is not going anyplace. And whatever they have to do, sometimes people get locked up, but I've seen bizarre things happen in court. Interesting little thing here in Norway. There's a Scandinavian system of day fines, which the fine you pay is going to be directly proportional to how much money you make. So this made like what I guess in 2009 would have been considered viral. A businessman was fined 12,000 euros, which is about 40,000 bucks, 30,000 bucks for speeding. There it is, 16,500 American. That's an old euro calculation. The euro is actually worth a little bit more than that now. For speeding 82 into 60, he was fined almost $20,000. That's what they do. That's not what we do. Everybody here pays the same fine. Whether you're a millionaire, you get a ticket for doing 82 into 60, you'll pay the same fine, 500 bucks. Somebody who is not a millionaire will come in and pay 500 bucks. Fines are all the same. Does this make a difference in Norway? I don't know. I don't live there, so I'm not sure. The death penalty is the most extreme penalty. It's the penalty that cannot be taken back, which is the argument people have about it. So it's also the only crime that the jury has to decide if the person is going to be put to death. You are not going to see too many. Matter of fact, I don't think you're going to see any bench trials for death penalty cases. This is an old statement. It's not 35 states. It's 31 states that have the death penalty, Nebraska being the most recent to actually execute somebody. So if we talk about why we have sentencing, why this is an objective for the court system, there's 5 main reasons that really shape and mold our modern sentencing practices. And the first is retribution. And the old saying is, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. So if you're not prepared to go to prison if you get caught or do a little bit of time in jail, you shouldn't do what you are doing. So really what we're doing with sentencing is these things are kind of in like a limbo right now because correctional facilities are understaffed and overwhelmed with the number of people that are there. I'm not saying that there should be less people in prison. I believe there should be more people in prison. But the prisons are understaffed. And therefore, these things, which take a lot of time and a lot of individual attention, have to go undone simply because the manpower does not exist in many prisons to do these kind of things. And we're really kind of in that warehousing mode of prisons and of corrections anywhere, where we're just trying to keep people as safe as possible. And these things have nothing to do with safe and secure detention. So really, when we're talking about why we have any kind of sentencing for any kind of crimes, whether it's locking somebody up or not, we're talking about a little bit of revenge. You have to pay the price. You have to be held accountable for that which you have done. And if you're locked up because of what you've done, guess what then? You're not going to be able to do it to anybody else for a certain amount of time. The people that are against prisons, they will say, oh, well, my God, it's just so terrible in prison. Well, prison's not meant to be a walk in the park. So if you do something wrong to the point where you have to do some time in prison, it's not going to be a pleasant experience. But the incapacitation ideal of prison means that we are keeping people off the street and preventing them from doing it again, at least that individual type of incapacitation. So retribution is definitely taking revenge. An eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. We talked about this in other classes in terms of the definition of what justice is. And retribution definitely fits that definition of how people view justice. It makes it impossible for an offender to reoffend if he's sitting in prison someplace. Incapacitation, I want you to remember this third little bullet, requires restraint and custody, not punishment. And if we think back to why prisons became crowded, we look back to the 80s and the quote-unquote war on drugs under the Reagan administration is when it really started. This is a big debate. Does the threat of prison actually stop people from doing something? When we talk about deterrence, there's two different types of deterrence. There's specific deterrence and general deterrence. Specific deterrence is going to prevent one single offender from committing those crimes for whatever period of time he or she is going to be locked up. That is going to specifically prevent them from doing that thing again. And we see this as the ideal in terms of repeat offending. people that just keep going out, third time, three strike type people, locking them up for longer and longer if they go out and continue to commit crimes. General deterrence, this is kind of what people view deterrence as being. Does the death penalty deter people from killing someone? Does the speed limit and the threat of a speeding ticket prevent people from speeding? Drive up and down 70 or 24 anytime soon? And the answer to that would be no. The threat of a speeding ticket does not deter people from speeding any more than the threat of capital punishment deters people from murdering somebody. So that's my opinion. You know, there's people that have a different opinion about it. But when we talk about the idea of specific deterrence, death penalty, there's people that are in favor of the death penalty and they say that that's going to make an example of people. There's people that, in terms of this idea of general deterrence, the three strikes, repeated offenders, they say that makes an example of people also. So you have to keep in mind these two different types of deterrence. Rehabilitation and restoration. Rehabilitation, rehab, is giving somebody some kind of skill or trying to get to the bottom of why they commit crimes and why they wind up in prison. The ultimate goal is to try to reduce the number of offenses, but it's also try to reduce the percentage of recidivism, that meaning reduce the number of people that are actually committing crimes and go back out and commit crimes once they're released into society. And it's all about behavior changing. Restoration is how do we make the victim whole again? How do we get them back into society successfully? Because if somebody comes out of prison, they've lost some rights. They can't vote. They can't do a number of other things. Nobody wants to hire a convicted felon, for good or for bad. And if they can't get a job, a good job, if they're relegated to minimum wage someplace and they have a family, of course they're going to slip and slide back into that which probably put them in prison in the first place. So the argument is restoration and rehabilitation are definitely the missing links, and these things should have more attention paid to them. When we talk about factors of sentencing, we have to talk about aggravating and mitigating factors. An aggravating factor is going to be something that's going to make it worse. It's a hate crime. If somebody kills a policeman, these are aggravating factors that will elevate that crime to that next level of heinousness. A mitigating factor could be something that makes what the person did less serious. And it might support a less strict punishment, a more lenient punishment. If somebody doesn't have a criminal record, if it was not a violent crime, if they had some kind of mental illness, if they gave information to the police that led to other people being held accountable, if they cooperated, so to speak, with law enforcement, then that's going to be a mitigating factor, and maybe they do less time than anybody else does. So these things are taken into consideration by the judge, and they have a chart by which they have to look, and they can insert these factors in and use them when they're determining the sentence. But when they are determining the sentence, there's a couple different types of sentences. An indeterminate sentence, to put it quite simply, you hear somebody got 5 to 20 years. That's an indeterminate sentence because it has a fixed minimum and then a fixed maximum, rather than a set period, which would be the determinate sentence. The state of Kansas, for instance, a few years ago, created the 50 hard sentence, which means essentially for somebody that gets it, it's 50 years and a day. They are not eligible for any kind of parole until they have served 50 years and 1 day. And the first person to get that was a woman who murdered her husband, ex-husband, and his girlfriend. She got 2 50 hard sentences, which is essentially a life sentence because they were set to, she was set to serve them consecutively, not concurrently, which is another interesting comment. Consecutive sentencing means when the first sentence is done, then you start serving the second one. So you essentially have 2 50-year sentences. If you serve those sentences consecutively, that means you serve them at the same time. So both sentences will begin on the same day and end on the same day. Concurrently, that is concurrently. Consecutive means when one is done, the other begins. Indeterminate sentencing has been said to encourage rehabilitation. The judge has a wide range of discretion with this type of sentencing. Probation and parole are options. Probation is a sentence that you are given. You are sentenced to probation. Parole is early release from prison, during both of which you have to abide by certain rules. Otherwise, you would be returned to prison immediately. Behavior of somebody during this period of indeterminate sentencing is during their trial and their behavior leading up to the trial and their participation in the crime is going to be dependent upon how much time they're going to get. And interestingly enough, the judge sets the minimum, or the judge sets the maximum, and the minimum is set by law. So there's a minimum number of years. The judge might say 10 to 25. As soon as a person is 10 years, they are eligible for parole, early release for parole. Good time, your book talks about good time laws, which is good on page 47. They pick on Illinois, or I should say they look at Illinois and talk about Illinois' good time laws, which have come under heavy scrutiny in the past. So you'll be reading about these different types of sentencing as you go through. I don't think there's anything else. Here's the charts that I was talking about. Kansas has a structured sentencing system. So let's say that somebody has a misdemeanor or no record, and it's a level 10, which is the least serious of the crimes. The judge then picks from these categories here 7, 6, or 5 months to lock that person up. If the person has committed 3+ person felonies, which are crimes against person, then the judge is going to be looking at these for that person's 4th felony. This is months. 653 divided by 12 is whatever, life sentence. So that is how they do it in Kansas for non-drugs. For drug offenses, you can see it's a little less. So this is how the judges have to look at how they're going to sentence people. Now, interestingly, the green is presumptive probation. That means that if they're in this category of these things here, down in terms of 1, 2, 3, or 4, this is where the judge is going to be making his or her decision in terms of how to sentence that person. I'm going to load this video up so you can watch it. So that's basically where we're at for this week. for sentencing information. You've got some discussion questions to answer. You've got a quiz to take, and I'm going to load these videos up for you to watch them also. Have a good week. I'll talk to you next week.